So we've got the our kind of leg that's built, and we've got all of the joints working, all that kind of stuff. And hopefully you should end up with something that looks roughly like this. So what we want to do is animate this. We could grab this, and I guess this bit and this, and we could rotate them. You can see it's not around the middle. We'd have to move the pivot point, and we'd have to do that on both of them, and it would be a bit complicated, and we'd have to animate each bit. And what we want to do is we want to kind of automate this a little bit to make the animation a bit easier. So what we're going to do is we're going to use some bones, and bones are basically how all characters and figures in movies are animated, and they basically control objects without you having to animate each individual object, because this is quite a big group of objects and it's a bit of a pain to keep selecting them. So the bones in Blender are pretty easy, and what we're going to do is we're going to sort of like look at where, if we look at this object and we look at it from this side, we can see that we've got like a natural point to put the bone, which is here, and then we're going to have a second one going from here, and if we see our donut here, we can see that we can put it like on this flat bit here, and it will work out. Okay, so let's kind of look at it from this direction, because that's the natural point to put the bone. So I'm going to add some armature. That's what they call the bones. So I've added one, but you can't really see it because it's hidden behind the objects. So in order to see it, if you go here to where this little dude is, you can make it go in front. And so now when we scale up this bone, you can see it, and it'll always be in front of what we're doing. And what we want to do is get the end of the bone right in the middle of that. Sometimes easier to do it in wireframe. Just scale it up so it's close. It doesn't need to be exact, but it needs to be pretty close. And I'm just pressing scale, and that will do. It's close enough. Now we need to extend it. So in edit mode, we can press extrude, and I'm going to press extrude, and it'll go off in a weird direction. Just press Z and it will lock it to that root or that angle, and then I'm going to keep it, just go to the top. And that is our bone system done. Easy. You can name them if you want, but it's not really necessary because we're not doing a complex animation. Right, so what we're going to do now is attach these objects to the bone system. So the bone system here is one object. And what we will need to do is we need to go into edit mode and select which bone we want to start off with. So we want to start off with this one. So I'm going to attach this object, this object, this object, and the axle to this bone. So I'm going to go to object mode. And because we're in edit mode, we selected this bone. When we go into object mode, it knows that this is the last bone that we picked. So I'm going to select this object, this object, this object, and the bone system, and press Ctrl P and attach it to bone, parent it to the bone. Then I'm going to go back into edit mode, and I'm going to grab this bone, and then back into object mode, and I'm going to select this, 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 and this object, and then Ctrl P, parent to the bone. Okay, so what has that done? Well, we've got this. If we go into pose mode, we won't use pose mode much, but we're just going to use it a little bit. If we go here and rotate it, move it around, you can see that everything's attached to the bone, which is great, and it's kind of what we want. The problem is that even that, it's still a bit of a pain to animate. And what we want to do is make this animate from one point in a dynamic way. So we're going to grab, in pose mode, we're going to grab this bone system. So don't grab this one, grab this one, and go pose, inverse kinematics, and we're going to add IK to bone, and we're going to add IK to an empty object. So here you can see it's created this little X. So I'm going to explain what IK is. IK is basically it's called inverse kinematics, and what it does is when I move this, it moves this in relation to the base of the bone. So that will make sense. So I'm just going to scale this up to make it bigger so that we can see what we're doing. And if I move this, just press G, it will move the whole bone system, which is great. Okay, so that's our kind of animation done. What I want to do is do a little bit of clear up of our bones, because our bone system is very big. So I'm going to change it from octahedral, is that how you say it? Octahedral, to stick. So it just makes the bones much easier to view, so that now when we move this, you can see that it moves around and our bone system works kind of perfectly. The problem is here. You can see what we've got is like, this really shouldn't be bending that way, and we don't want it to bend it that way. So what we want to do is we want to kind of play around with that. So we're going to go into, in all of these things, we've got like different kind of options, and in the dude again, we're going to go to inverse kinematics. Is it? No, this one, I think. Oh no, we have to go into pose mode. So go into here, go into inverse kinematics in the bones. And what we want to do is that this bone here, we want to lock it so that, so I'm locking it on this one. It might be a different one for you, depending on what way around your model is. But I'm going to lock it on there so that it won't, whatever I do with this IK handle, so if I go here, then this will not break. It won't, like the ball and socket is great, like that's cool and everything, but this one won't ever kind of go wrong, if you see what I mean. Right, that's the end of the kind of IK rigging. So what I want to do now is I'm going to move this back to the top. So it needs to go to the top of there. It needs to go here. And I'm just moving this with G. I'm not doing anything fancy. And I want to get this here and I'm going to leave it. And then I want to basically say that this is the end point for it. So I'm just going to press Control A and apply all transforms to delta. And what that means is that this item is zeroed out. So if I ever move this, I can move it back. And that's what we're going to do for now. And then I'm going to do another video to show you how to kind of finish the rigging.